I was going to wake up early and wash my hair before I filmed this video, and then I was like, you know what? I could just not wash my hair and wear a Christmas hat because this is a Christmas themed video. I have spent the last 2-3 months trying to read as many sapphic Christmas books as possible so I can make this video and tell you whether or not they're worth reading. I am so Hallmark cheesy Christmas booked out. It is unbelievable. I am so glad that I'm at the end of this because when I went into this, when I had the idea for this video, I was like, yeah, that'd be a really cute, fun time. Tell you what though, there is only so much fake dating that one girl can read. If I have to read one more fake dating trope in the next 2 years, I might cry. I will cry. So without further ado, let me tell you about 10 sapphic Christmas books I've read and whether or not it's worth you reading them too. This is only 4 of them. I read most of them on Kindle Unlimited. Turns out, Kindle Unlimited, great selection of sapphic Christmas books. Who would have thought? Starting with a physical book though, this is Kiss Her Once For Me by Alison Cochrane. I actually didn't read this year. I read this maybe last year or the year before. And this is just a very cheesy, very Hallmark Christmas rom-com. All of these books are, to be honest with you. I gave this one 4 stars when I read it because I just really enjoyed the characters in this. So our main character here is Ellie. She has moved to Portland in Oregon to sort of follow her dreams of becoming an animator, if I remember correctly. And on Christmas Eve one year, she runs into this woman in a bookstore called Jack, and they really, really hit it off. Like, they end up spending the entire night together. Like, it's a real meet-cute kind of situation. And then the next morning, there's something happens. This is going to be spoiler-free reviews. Something happens, which basically means they part ways, and Ellie is absolutely heartbroken. She goes off and spends, the next year thinking about Jack. Like, she can't move on from her. But for whatever reason, they can't be together. And then she basically works in a coffee shop because her dreams of animation, they're just not really happening. And her boss comes in one day and he's like, oh, I've got all this family money that I'm going to inherit, but they won't let me inherit it until I'm married. And Ellie's like, you know what? I also need some money. Why don't I pretend to marry you and I can have a split of your money? And they're like, yeah, this is a really good plan. So Ellie and Andrew go off together to his family's very expensive, very fancy cabin up in the ski mountains. And when Ellie gets there, she quickly realizes that Jack, the woman she has been in love with for the past year, is Andrew's sister. It's very much the kind of plot you'd expect from a Christmas rom-com. They're all pretty much the same. I'm not going to lie to you, all of these books have very, very similar plots. But I just really enjoyed this one. I love the characterization. I thought Ellie was quite a frustrating character at points, but in a very endearing, very human way. I really like Jack as a character. If I remember correctly, Jack was more of a butch lesbian, not proper butch, maybe a bit more mask, which isn't something you see very often. This is chock full of tropes. You've got the forced proximity, you've got the fake dating, you've got a snowed in trope, and yeah, I just really like this one. This one is also super festive. It really, really leans into the whole Christmas thing because they turn up and Andrew and Jack's mum's got all these different Christmas activities and traditions planned, like making cookies and watching movies. And it's just it really, really leans heavily into the Christmas, which I really liked. I would recommend this one. Next up, I read The Christmas Swap by Talia Samuels. I did not like this book. It might have been the time of year I read it. I read this back in April because I've been planning this video for literal months. I wanted to do it last Christmas, but I didn't read enough books in time. So in April, I was like, oh, I better start reading books for that Christmas video. Then I read one and didn't read another one until the beginning of November. So it might have been the time of year in which I read this. It wasn't very festive. When I put this up on my Goodreads, I'd read it. Everyone was like, what are you doing? Why are you reading a Christmas book in April? That's literally called The Christmas Swap. But I gave this 2.5 stars. Again, a very similar premise for this one. Ben needs a date for the holidays. Margot doesn't have anywhere to go for the holidays. And so she agrees to go back to his family home with him and pretend to be his date. And I think the downfall of this book for me personally was that Ben was actually a really, really sweet character. You will rarely hear me saying that about men, but Ben was genuinely really sweet. So when everything goes down, you just feel really sorry for him. And the way that Margot deals with everything is not great because Margot turns up at his family house. I think this one's set in England, if I remember correctly. So it's this stately manor kind of situation. And when they turn up, Margot is instantly obsessed with Ben's sister, who is called... I have no idea. No idea what Ben's sister's called, didn't write it down. But Margot is just obsessed with her and they start to have this romance behind Ben's back. and you just feel sorry for Ben pretty much because neither of them deal with it in a good way at all. Like, fake dating is a cliche trope. Like, all Christmas books have fake dating in them, but like there's a good way of dealing with it and there's a bad way of dealing with it, and the way they're sneaking off behind Ben's back, like, it was just dealt with so badly. I know you've kind of got to suspend your belief when it comes to Hallmark cheesy rom-coms, but I just felt bad for Ben. And I don't like saying that. I don't like saying I feel bad for men, but I did. I thought this whole book was a bit of like a dichotomy, I suppose, where like Talia Samuels over explains everything. Like, there's no space for the reader to be like, oh, I wonder what's going on there. Like she puts it smack bang on the page, like, this is what's happening. And it's very like over explained, very detailed, but also at the same time, very surface level, which I really struggled with. Again, I don't think I'd recommend this one. Sorry. The Christmas Swap, not for me. Make the Season Bright by Ashley Herring Blake. I hold Ashley Herring Blake to really high standards. Like, she has written some of my favourite lesbian books ever written. The Delilah Green series, Brightfall series, love it, adore it, will not hear a bad word about it. Make the Season Bright was not her best work. I don't think it was bad by any means. It wasn't as good as Delilah Green, but then again, was anything ever going to be as good as Delilah Green? Probably not. I think I gave this one 3 stars in the end, maybe 3.5 stars if I'm feeling super generous. I feel like it has a really strong start and then it kind of loses itself a little bit in the middle, and then the ending is kind of like a bit mid as well. Our main characters in this one are Charlotte and Brighton. Make the Season Bright. I thought that was quite clever, very punny. They're both musicians and they were actually together for a long time. They were childhood sweethearts. They were in a very serious relationship, very serious to the point that they were about to get married, as in like Charlotte was waiting at the top of the aisle for Brighton, and Brighton just doesn't turn up. She ditches her fiancé at the aisle, and after that point, they don't see each other for 5 years, they don't talk. Brighton and Charlotte have both spent the last 5 years trying to get over what happened to them, like it was a very traumatizing event. And this book opened with Charlotte. She is now a bit of like an ice queen. She doesn't let anyone in. She hasn't told anyone about her past. She is part of a very successful like quartet in New York City. She loves New York City as like her whole identity, which is relatable. No, I don't live in New York City. I just love it a lot. And Brighton is now living in Nashville, trying to like follow her dreams of becoming a singer, but also she hasn't sung in like 6 months because it's too painful. There's a lot going on in this book, and neither of them have anywhere to go for Christmas, so their best friends both agreed to take them home to their houses for Christmas, to their family homes. Only it turns out that both their best friends happen to be sisters. They're going back to the same house for Christmas. They turn up and they see each other for the first time in 5 years. You've got forced proximity, you've got second chance romance, you've got childhood best friends to lovers to enemies to lovers again, question mark. No spoilers, but you can probably guess where this book is going to go because it is a Christmas rom-com. I just felt like the motivations in this book were really, really hard to like work through as a reader. Brighton literally left Charlotte at the altar. Like, she did possibly the worst thing ever. And as you go through the book, you can begin to understand her motivations. You understand why she did it. But a lot of this could have been fixed with just like one very candid conversation. Like, leading up to the wedding, Brighton was having all of these doubts, all these worries, but never actually had like a very candid conversation with Charlotte about it, and then just left her at the aisle. And then Charlotte turned into quite a bitch. Like, Charlotte did not turn into a nice person after that, which I suppose you probably wouldn't. But it's like very hard to work through as the reader because you're like, these people shouldn't be together. Like, they need therapy together before they can like jump back into being in a relationship. But the Christmas vibes in this one, they're very strong. It's a very Christmassy book. If you want Christmas, it serves. It's giving at Christmas. The mum of the sisters basically sets them all up on these like dating events because she hates that her children are single and hates that her children's friends are single. She's a very nosy, getting involved in every aspect of your life kind of mum. So sets them all up on these like Christmas dating events, and so the entire book is them basically trying to date other people but also like only really having eyes for each other. It is very Christmassy, it's very cute. What else do I have to say about this book? I adored the cast of side characters in this. I feel like that's something Ashley Herring Blake always does really well. Like, she doesn't just focus on the main protagonist, like she builds everyone up. Like, everyone has a story, has a background, has a personality, and that is very true in this book. Like, I love the friends. I thought there were so many layers to them, and it just added something really nice to the story. This book literally opens with Charlotte being stuck in a lift, which probably wouldn't bother most people. This is a very niche, very me problem. I am terrified of lifts, of elevators, like terrified to my core. Haven't been in one in, I couldn't even tell you, probably in the last decade. So that bothered me. But I worked through it. I was really brave. I read it. I got through it. And I'm still alive. I'm still standing. And I only cried a little bit. So that's really big of me. I'm very proud of myself. Oh, and the spice. This book, spicy. Ashley Herring Blake writes spice really, really well. It gets me every time. Very spicy, but very good. Also, Brighton and Charlotte very much just like use sex to avoid talking about their feelings, which I'm sure is relatable to many people. Like, why talk about feelings when you can just have sex? That is very much how they go through life in this book. In the Event of Love by Courtney Kay, I gave this one 3 stars. I thought this book had a very cute premise, but I found it very hard to get through. And I don't know if I just wasn't in the mood to be reading this specific book at this moment. But it took me so long to read this. I think it literally took me about 2 weeks to get through this quite short book. And I was excited for this one because the blurb literally names Alexandria Bellfleur and Casey McQuiston as inspirations for this book. It's very similar to what Alexandria Bellfleur writes. And I was like, oh, I love Alexandria Bellfleur. That's really exciting. And it didn't live up to it. And I feel very strongly they should not be including other authors who are very, very successful, very good at what they do in blurbs if your book's not going to live up to it. I feel very strongly about that because I always feel cheated. But anyway, the premise of this one, no fake dating, thank God. Morgan is a big-time event planner living in LA. She is very, very good at her job. She's very successful. But then she finds herself in a bit of a PR nightmare when she ends up accidentally getting with one of her clients in a club. One of her clients whose wedding she is literally planning. And so she kind of has to run away from LA for a little bit, just let it all blow over. So decides to go back to her hometown of Fern Falls. Am I making that up? No, it is Fern Falls. And when she gets there, she's driving, it's snowing, and she loses control of her car and literally crashes into a Christmas tree farm. And the Christmas tree farm just so happens to be owned by the family of her teenage love, her female teenage love, her sexual awakening, who she ran away from many years beforehand because there was a whole thing, basically. No spoilers. So Morgan quite literally crashes back into Rachel, who is her teenage love's life, and they almost immediately just hit it back off where they began. There's no deep conversations, really. There's no we need to talk about what we went through because it was quite traumatic for both of us. There's a lot of feelings that have been unaddressed for so many years. No, they just kind of immediately go back to being best friends, which I kind of get because it was the whole being in love with your best friend situation, and they were mutually in love with each other. But there's some sort of conversation to be had, surely. My fatal flaw is that I'm such a realist that I read rom-coms and these silly little books that you're not meant to take all that seriously, and I'm where are the deep conversations? They really need to sort their shit out. They need to have a chat about this. And maybe it destroys the fun a little bit for me, but I don't know. I am who I am. Out of all the books I'm sharing with you today, this is probably the most authentically Hallmarky, that real cheesy Hallmark movie kind of vibe. This book is that. Morgan literally crashing back into her old love's Christmas tree farm. It's so Christmassy. They do all these different Christmas tree events, not Christmas tree events, Christmassy events to save the Christmas tree farm, which is about to be shut down by a big corporation who's trying to buy all the land. It's very, very that. Although actually it's very Hallmark if there's also a lot of very steamy sex scenes involved. This book is surprisingly steamy. I didn't go into it thinking it was going to be so spicy, but it was. It was a surprise. Were the spice scenes good? I think they were. I think they were good, but I didn't really it didn't read that kind of book in the first chapter. Maybe it did. Maybe I just wasn't expecting it. Like I said, this book was really hard to get through. But I think my main problem with this book is that Morgan was just so hard to like as a character. She just continually makes really, really bad choices. She is furious at her dad because her dad's got rejected by the woman that he loved when Morgan was a teenager. He literally got down on one knee and proposed to her, and she was no. She's also the one who went on to own the big conglomerate that's trying to buy all the land. Side story. So he got rejected and fell into this deep depression because he was like, she was the love of my life. Like, I don't know what to do now. And Morgan, instead of being like, oh, that's really hard for you, like, we should really try and get you some like therapy and get you some help, like, I'm gonna be here for you, she just was like, ugh, you're so annoying. I'm leaving to go to LA and I'm not coming back for like 5 years. Like, Morgan sucks. It's really hard to root for her. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars, which now I'm saying it out loud, like now I'm talking about this, I'm kind of like, was that a bit generous? Maybe it was, but that was the vibe at the time. Ratings are just vibes. A Holly Jolly Christmas by Emily Wright. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I absolutely adored this book. Without a doubt, A Holly Jolly Christmas. If you're going to read any book in this list, it is this one. This book was so freaking good. This is definitely a heavier look at Christmas. Like, it doesn't really lean into the Hallmark vibes at all. It deals with some really heavy real life issues, but I adored how it did it. It still felt really Christmassy, but it felt very true to life. Emily Wright is such an incredible writer. Like, I was reading this, like, lots of these books I've been reading, they are cheesy, they're not well written, which you don't really expect them to be super well written because they're Christmas rom-coms. But this one, I was reading it and I was literally like, I love how this author writes. To the point that I literally finished this book and then I downloaded another book by the same author because I was like, I need more. I need to see if she like consistently writes this good. Spoiler alert, I think she does. Our main character in this one is a woman called Holly, a Holly Jolly Christmas. Also, maybe I'm biased because my wife is called Holly, but it's a good name. I liked Holly as a character. She hasn't been home in many years. She lives in a small town in like northern England. Or she lived in a small town in northern England because now she lives in London. And she basically ran away from her hometown after her brother died. Her brother Cameron was like her best friend ever. And then he died really unexpectedly in a ski accident. And Holly just hasn't been able to face going home since because everything she does there, like her house, her town, the people she sees, everything just reminds her of Cameron and what she lost. And like, she's never dealt with that grief. Like 5 years on, she's still like deep into it. But for the first time in 5 years, she decided to go home for Christmas. And you can tell that her parents are a lot better at dealing with their grief than Holly is. And she gets quite frustrated at them at points because they like are like, you need to talk about him, we need to talk about this. And she's just like not at a point where she can even like think about him at this point. And through this book, you see her as she works through her grief and she works through all the pain and suffering that she's gone through and is finally able to like actually deal with her brother's death a little bit better. And that's definitely like part of the main plot of the story. But the other half of the plot is that her and her brother's best friend growing up was their neighbour called Vicky. And Vicky and Holly always had like a something going on, like something a little bit more. Cameron would always be like, you two are gonna get married one day. And it turns out they did have like a brief thing as teenagers, and Holly also just ran away from that because she didn't know how to deal with her feelings around that either. So going back home, Vicky still lives next door with her parents, and Holly's forced to also confront all of her feelings for Vicky and finally like address all of that as well. Holly's going through a lot. Like this Christmas period, Holly is dealing with a lot of stuff. It's very heavy, but it actually is very therapeutic for her. This book is just genuinely really good. It's really well written. There's parts in it that made me smile and laugh. Other parts made me actually like physically cry, which rarely happens in a book. There's something that made me feel so viscerally, which I think just is an ode to how good the writing was. What else did I write in my notes? Oh, it's very, very English. Like this is like a true English Christmas, which I really enjoyed. But it is still full of like Christmas cheer and Christmas joy, despite it being so heavy. I don't know, it just felt really, really real. The romance in this, the relationship between Holly and Vicky is really, really slow burn to the point that you actually don't really know which way it's going to go. Like halfway through the book, I was literally like, I don't know if these characters are going to end up together or if it's going to be like some sort of like lesson at the end of the book where it's like you can't always have what you dreamed of having for so many years. Like sometimes people move on. I really didn't know which way it was going to go. I'm not going to tell you, which I really enjoyed. Like you read all these rom-coms and you kind of know exactly how they're going to end because the couple always end up together. And in this one, I didn't know if they were going to. The characters are very realistic. They're genuinely likable. They do make stupid mistakes and they say stupid things and make stupid decisions, but like in a very human, very real way. This is about reconnecting with community, and there's talk of dogs and horses. Like Holly's mum has a horse and they go to the yard together, and it was really making me laugh because I was literally like, this is my entire life because I also have a horse. And yeah, I really love this book. Like I really, really loved it. If you read any that I'm talking about today, I would read this one, or I'd recommend this one. But it is heavy, so if you're looking for something lighter, maybe not this one. But I loved it so much. Next up, we have The Christmas Cat by Claire Lydon. I am not going to lie to you, I usually love Claire Lydon books. I recommend them all the time on this channel. I did not like this book. I gave this 2 stars, and honestly, I can't entirely put my finger on why I didn't like it. I just didn't. Sometimes it is just a vibe. Like, at face value, reading the blurb, I thought I'd really enjoy this book, but for some reason, I just kept putting it down. I did not want to pick it up again. I think because I was always waiting for the next thing to happen. And I don't know, I just couldn't get into it. So our main characters here are Morgan and Ali. They both live in Glasgow, but they don't know they both live in Glasgow. Ali is the younger sister of Morgan's childhood best friend. And Ali has always had a crush on Morgan. She thought she was like older and really cool. And now they're in their late 30s and they both live in Glasgow. They don't know each other, live in Glasgow. And they are going to catch a flight to fly home back down to Somerset or Devon, like somewhere in the southwest. I can't remember where it's set. But they're basically flying home for the Christmas holidays, and the flight gets cancelled, and they realise that they know each other, and so they decide to embark on a road trip, or so they think, back down home together. And Ali, did I say that Ali's always been obsessed with Morgan? I think I did say that. So they begin their journey all the way from Glasgow right down to somewhere, Somerset, Devon. I wish I could remember. I can't. And it's just a series of disasters beginning to end. They get a lift to a service station, then they're stuck at a service station, then they have to like kind of hitchhike, and then they rent a car and the car breaks down. They get on a train and the train ends up having to stop because of snow. And it's just like there's always something going wrong, and I thought I'd really enjoy it. Like a disaster journey is always something I do quite enjoy in a book, but there's just something about this one. I was always kind of like, oh, what's going to happen next? Because you know that every mode of transport they get on is going to end up breaking down in some way. It was just like, I don't know why I didn't enjoy it. I just really didn't. But I actually don't even know if you should be paying attention to my review with this one, because all of the reviews on Goodreads are like solid 4-5 stars. Like people really, really enjoyed this book. Maybe I just wasn't in the right headspace. I just didn't really like it. I didn't think Morgan and Ali had any chemistry whatsoever. I thought Ali was a very prickly kind of character. Like she is very quick to like get offended, and Morgan's always apologising. Like, you know, the kind of people out there who every time you say something, you like worry that you've said the wrong thing or you've offended them and you're going to be in trouble for it later. Like that is kind of how I felt with Ali. So maybe that was just like a personal thing that really didn't sit well with me. Like I hate people you've got to like watch yourself around all the time. Did I say they're like both in their late 30s, which I thought was cute. Like it was nice to have like older characters, older sapphic characters in a book. But also like there's no characterization of them as older. You're just told that they're in the late 30s. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't like it. Sorry, guys, I didn't. This one, though, this one I absolutely adored. This is How to Excavate a Heart by Jake Meyer Arlo. This is a funny one because this is like quite categorically not a Christmas book, but it is set over the holiday season, and there's a lot of like reflections and thoughts about Christmas in this book. And so I couldn't not include it because I just absolutely adored this. This is YA, and it's probably one of my favourite YAs that I've read all year. Our main character here is Shani, and she is Jewish, so she doesn't celebrate Christmas. She is spending the winter holiday break in Washington, D.C. doing an internship because she is really interested in paleoichthyology, which I learned in this book is the study of fish, like fossilized, ancient, old fish. Shani is basically a massive nerd, and anyone who is a massive nerd has a very special place in my heart. She's recently started college, she's discovering her sexuality, she got a girlfriend at college, and the girlfriend ended up breaking up with her for a reason that I'm not going to say because it will spoil it. And so Shani is now moving to Washington, D.C. for the winter break to do this internship. She's healing a broken heart. She's just very depressed. She's not in a very good place. And she then meets a girl called May after she agrees to walk May's dad's dog. And May is also a very prickly character. May is not interested in making friends. She's like going through a lot herself. And it starts off as kind of like an enemy situation. It is very much an enemies to lovers kind of book. And they slowly break down each other's walls and they become friends. And I just thought it was so, so sweet. The way their friendship slowly morphs into more of like a romantic thing as Shani's trying to figure out if May's gay, what's going on. And you sort of see their relationship as it unfolds. You see Shani become very obsessed with May. She sort of begins to make some mistakes at work because all she can think about is her new girlfriend and messaging her and like making plans with her. And it was like, it's so relatable when you're like a baby gay in a new relationship and it's so exciting. It kind of like takes over your life. I've never really seen that depicted in a book before, and I thought that was really, really cute. This book just leans into lesbian culture, and a big part of lesbian culture is being overly obsessed with your girlfriend. It happens to all of us. It very much happens to Shani in this book. May is also Jewish as well, so the two of them spend the Christmas season together because everyone else is like off celebrating Christmas, and there's a lot of like ponderings and musings on like the Christmas lights and Christmas traditions and like how weird they seem to a Jewish person and like what they mean to the Christian people. I just thought it was really cute. Like it was really like interesting look at Christmas like from the outside. And it's just like, despite not being about Christmas at all, like you very much feel the Christmas vibes. The two get snowed in together on Christmas Day, just the two of them. I love, love, love a snowed in situation. I don't know why, I really enjoy that as a trope. I just really like this. It was really, really cute. This Christmas by Georgia Beers, I gave just 1.5 stars. I'm really sorry to my fellow Georgia. I wanted to enjoy this. I did. I just didn't. I'm sorry. I found it really, really hard to get through. This is a Christmas rom-com centered around an animal shelter called Junebug Farms, and they basically are wanting to raise money. This farm shelter is really, really struggling to care for all the animals, and they need to think of something big to do to raise a load of money and save the shelter. And our two main characters here are, what are they called? Sammy and Keegan. This book opens with Sammy and Keegan hooking up, like things are getting hot, things are getting steamy, and then Keegan just suddenly freaks out, gets up, walks out, and Sammy is left heartbroken because she's like Keegan for a really, really long time. I don't know if they just never went into Sammy and Keegan's like history. That like it seems there was a lot of history there between them. I don't know if I missed it because this book was so boring. I was kind of skimming a lot of it, or it just never is really explained. But you don't really ever know why Keegan freaked out like she did. She just like got up and walked out. And then you jump forward a year. Sammy and Keegan haven't really spoken at all in that whole year. Sammy is still hopelessly obsessed with her. And they are both going to the Junebug Shelter's farm thing to help with some fundraising. And they both sign up to the Junebug Farms King and Queen event. The idea is that the shelter are going to appoint like a king and queen, like a prom king and prom queen, but like for the shelter, in order to send them off and like raise awareness and raise money. It basically sounded like we're going to make people sign up to this, and whoever wins, we're going to put them through like a lot of work. We're going to take over their entire Christmas season by making them fundraise endlessly for us. Like it was a lot of things that were expected of the Junebug King and Queen, and I was kind of thinking like I would not sign up to something like that. Like I'm happy to like donate money and fundraise, but like giving up my entire Christmas season, maybe I'm not a good person. It was a lot. But anyway, Sammy and Keegan both independently sign up to be Junebug Queens, and Sammy's grandmother, who also has like random point of view chapters in this book, is very nosy, very like involved in her granddaughter's love life, and decides to basically mess with the results and make it so that Sammy and Keegan both win. So instead of like a king and queen, it's two queens, and the grandmother keeps going on about how like wonderfully progressive it is. And honestly, it kind of got to a point in this book where I was like, if I have to read progressive one more time, I'm going to scream. Like we know it's progressive. Like it's just like, it was very much given like, I'm gonna really ram it down your throat how cool it is that we're doing this. It was weird. So Sammy and Keegan are now being forced to spend a lot of time together as the Junebug Queens, and forced proximity, things happen. I just did not care for this book at all. Like I thought there was such little chemistry between them. I could not understand Keegan's motivations for like not wanting to be with Sammy in the first place. Sammy was just annoying. Sammy's grandmother was so involved. I don't know if that's like some sort of like personal trauma that I have, but like her grandmother was so crazy involved in her love life that it was making me cringe. Like I could not deal with it. Like, don't get me wrong, I love a grandmother that is supportive of her granddaughter's gayness. Like, that was really, really cute. You probably don't need to be so involved in it, though. Like, it was just very unsexy. I really, really struggled to differentiate between the voices of Sammy and Keegan in this book. The chapters sort of split between their point of views and occasionally Sammy's grandmother's point of view as well. And I really couldn't figure out who was talking or whose brain I was in at any one time. I really, really struggled with that. There was like lots of talk of all the different dogs in the shelter, but all the dogs kind of like just like merged into one. I didn't know which dog was which, and like it got very convoluted, very complicated, very fast. I did like how like the focus is on shelters and how important it is to like help animals and help shelters and like adopt, don't shop, and all that. But I just didn't like it. I'm sorry, I didn't. We're nearing the end now, guys. We have Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellfleur. I really ummed and ahed whether to include this book in this video because this isn't like at face value a Christmas book. Like, it's not advertised as a Christmas book, like Christmas rom-com, but it's set over the Christmas season, like set over Christmas and New Year's. That makes it Christmassy, right? Like, there's a Christmas tree and everything in this book. It's Christmassy. I literally mentioned earlier in this video how much I freaking adore Alexandria Bellfleur's book, so of course I had to find a way to talk about her. Our main characters in this are Darcy and Elle. Darcy is this real, like, type A, highly strung kind of woman. She works as an actuary. I don't know what an actuary does, but it's a proper businesswoman kind of job. And Elle is an astrologer. She runs a Twitter page in which she basically gives people their horoscopes. And so they are very, very different people at their cores. Only Elle is kind of becoming really good friends with a man called Brandon. Brandon is running a dating app and he basically wants to converge the astrology bit with his dating app, and so they're working together. And Brandon sets Elle up on a date with his sister Darcy, and so they go on this date and it is an absolute disaster. It's awkward, they don't get on, they don't like each other, like it's just not working. But when Darcy goes home and her brother asks her, like, what was the date like, did you like her, Darcy is so sick of telling her brother, like, no, I didn't like her, like, we didn't get on, like, she's so sick of her love life being the disaster of the family, that she lies and said they got on really, really well. Only it kind of snowballs from there, and Darcy and Elle end up having to fake date over the Christmas season. This book is very predictable. It is a rom-com after all, but I just absolutely loved it. I love the characters in this, like both Darcy and Elle are so fully fledged as characters. You really feel them leaping off the page. Their chemistry absolutely leaps off the page. The spice in this is so good. Like, I have nothing bad to say about this book. I just absolutely love it. It's probably not as heavy on the Christmas elements as some of the other books I've spoken about in this video. Like, it's not inherently like a Christmas rom-com. It's just a rom-com set at Christmas. But if that's what you're looking for, like Christmas light, Written in the Stars, the one for you. I'm just such a sucker for an opposites attract kind of romance. I love, love, love the trope of opposites attract. I love a really slow burn romance whilst people like try like slowly figure out all the things they've got in common. I love seeing chemistry literally leaping off the page. I cannot stress enough how good the chemistry is in this book. Yeah, I love this. Which brings us to our last book of the video. This is Make You Mine This Christmas by Lizzie Huxley Jones. And I'm going to be very honest with you right now. I could lie. I'm not going to lie to you. I am only about 80% of the way through this book. I wanted to finish it in time to film this video. I didn't. But I feel like 80% is close enough that I can give you a well-rounded review. I'm thinking 3 stars at this point. Unless something crazy happens in the last 20%, it's probably going to be a solid 3 stars. This book is chock full of representation. If you want representation coming out of your ears, this is the book for you. Our main character is Hav. I think I'm saying that right. She's Welsh. It's like H-A-F. But in the book it says it's pronounced like Hav. Hav. They also make a point of saying that no English person can say Hav's name correctly. So I am that stereotypical English person. But Hav is a fat, neurodivergent, queer main character. Hav lives with their housemate Ambrose, who is non-binary and also Chinese American. Not Chinese American, nope, that is very wrong. Chinese British. Then the person that Hav falls in love with is disabled, walks with a cane. And like none of this is like made a big deal of. It's just like these are facts about these characters and this is who they are, which I really, really liked. I thought it was like really well written in that way. But I will say this book is cheesy to the extreme. Hav meets a man called Christopher at a party. She describes him as like handsome and tall, and they really hit it off. Like she literally follows him and they go talk in the garden for hours, and they really have like a lot of chemistry. They're really bouncing off each other, and then there's a little piece of mistletoe and they decide to kiss under the mistletoe. And then that's when Christopher's ex-girlfriend, ex-fiance, ex turns up, and basically they end up lying and saying that Hav is his new girlfriend because his old girlfriend's there with her new partner, and like it's a whole thing. And then that transpires into Christopher taking Hav home for Christmas. Only despite all the chemistry they seem to have in like the first couple of chapters of this book, at some point it's decided that they actually don't like each other like that and they only like each other as friends. And I don't really know at what point that happened. They just like decided suddenly that they don't like each other in that way and they're friends only, which did I miss something? I don't really know. So by the time Hav is home with Christopher, they're just like besties. Like they get on so well, and they do genuinely get on so well, to the point that there's more chemistry with Hav and Christopher than there is with Hav and her love interest, who just so happens to be Christopher's sister. And Hav was at St. Pancras train station, basically waiting to meet Christopher, waiting for their train. She is in a bookshop and meets this incredible woman who she's like immediately obsessed with, and they have like a very sweet little meet cute. They have some flirting in the shop. They like really like each other. They don't end up exchanging numbers or anything because Kit, the sister, ends up walking away. And so Hav is like thinking the entire time about this incredible woman that she's met in this train station. And then she gets to Christopher's house and Kit is there. When they first met in the bookshop, they actually bond over the book Carol by Patricia Highsmith, which is one of my absolute favourite books of all time, so I did really enjoy that. And there's a lot of references to Carol throughout this, and I enjoyed that. I actually nearly mentioned Carol in this video, but whilst I do vehemently believe that Carol, the film, with Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara, is a Christmas film, I don't think I'd class the book as a Christmas book. It's set, like, they meet at Christmas time, but then the book, like, goes off into the rest of the year. Whereas the movie, I feel like, is more inherently Christmas. It's more set around Christmas. But yeah, I'm 80% of the way through this book, and I just don't feel the chemistry between Hav and Kit at all. Like, they barely even interact in this book at all. They have barely any conversations, just like a lot of sitting in the same room and like making eyes at each other, but they don't actually really get to know each other at any point. Whereas Hav and Christopher have all of these like really deep chats and deep conversations. And so I can't imagine anything crazy is going to happen in the last 20% that's going to change that for me. Because I assume they're going to get together. I don't know. I assume they will. But I'm kind of like, there's no basis for this relationship. Like, Hav has been obsessed with her since the moment she met her in the bookshop. But, like, you don't know the woman. You don't know her. I don't get it. So yeah, I don't hate this book. Like, I like all the different representation in it. I like the references to other queer culture bits, like Carol. I'm not hating reading it, I just don't see the chemistry between the people that you're supposed to see the chemistry between. And I feel like in a romantic Christmas book, like a rom-com, you're supposed to see that chemistry. If anything changes, I'll put something up on the screen to let you know, but I doubt it will. So there you go. There are 10 sapphic Christmas rom-coms that I've read and my thoughts on them. Which ones do I recommend the most strongly? Without a doubt, How to Excavate a Heart. If you like YA, I cannot recommend this one enough. Also, which other ones do I enjoy? Written in the Stars, always. Again, it's Christmas light, but it is technically set at Christmas. I think it counts. And Have a Holly Jolly Christmas by Emily Wright. If you want something a little bit heavier with a bit more substance to it, cannot recommend that one enough. I really, really enjoyed that book. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Let me know in the comments what Christmas books you've read, Christmas sapphic books or gay books generally. Let them know in the comments. Maybe I'll do this again next year. Maybe I'll be able to stomach fake dating again in a year's time. We'll see. My goal for the end of this year was to hit 10,000 subscribers, and I am so happy to say that I actually hit it about a week ago. I hit it at the beginning of December. I was so excited because I didn't think I'd be able to hit it so early. So thank you so much if you are subscribed and you're enjoying these videos, you're interacting with them. It means so much. I'm having so much fun talking about gay books. All I want to do in life is talk about gay sapphic books, and I'm actually able to do it now on here, and I'm having so much fun with it. I think I'm going to set a big goal for 2025. I think I want to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of next year. So if you want to join me on that journey, please do subscribe to this channel. I want to create an army of queer women around me. Not an army, a community. Maybe community is a better word. I just want to be surrounded by queerness and queer women. So please join me. If you're straight, you're also allowed to join. You are. Straight people, you are allowed to join. But definitely if you're a lesbian or bisexual woman, queer woman in any way, please join.